Welcome to the National Newspaper Publishers Association's Let It Be Known. Artist Shantell Martin recently announced a collaboration with Atari and gaming platform POLYCADE. Shantell is the first artist featured in the launch of POLYCADE Limiteds, which is a cultural crossover between video games and art, in which 12 contemporary artists were commissioned, not recommissioned, but commissioned to reskin a classic Atari game such as Asteroids. Y'all remember that, right? Pong, Centipede, Missile Command, and Breakout. Each reskin game is fully playable and reimagined with the artist's vision, redesigning all graphics and backgrounds. Today, we speak with Shantell Martin. Good morning, Shantell.
Good morning. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you. This is really exciting. It's so interesting. So, but let's start here. What do you think video games as an artistic medium uniquely have to offer?
Video games today to video games that we used to play as kids, I think there's a big kind of gap between them. But for me, what they had to offer and what they have to offer is this idea about imagination, this idea of creativity, this idea about exploring new worlds. And I think that also helps us to imagine new places in our own lives and in our real lives. And just to mention Atari briefly, you remember the controllers for that. It was just a black box with a joystick and one red button. But with that simplicity, you could go into all these different worlds. And so I think the main thing is imagination.
Yeah. And I'm asking you this question, but you seem, you appear to be too young for this, but I'm going to ask you.
No, you can't ask me. You can't, yeah. I'm older than I look, of course.
All right. So what were some of the classic games you played when you were younger? What were your favorites?
You just mentioned a couple actually earlier. One of them was Centipede. I love that game. Obviously Asteroids, which is the game that I've reskinned. And then there was another game called R-Type, which I love that game. But it was quite serious, because you couldn't save a game back in the day. So, if you're playing and one of your sisters comes in the room and then you die, you're like, that's it. Your whole day is ruined.
So what was that like, reskinning Asteroids? For people who don't know, I mean, that's the game where you're really just blowing stuff up there. Right?
Yeah. So Asteroids is an Atari classic. So, I think Atari's been around for 50 years. So Asteroids has been around for just as long. And it's one of those games where you're this little UFO and these asteroids are coming towards you. And then you basically are pivoting to shoot the asteroids before they hit you. And for me, that's such a classic game that I wanted to give it kind of my own spin on it. And so the way that I interpret the game is a way of us finding our own fears and overcoming them. So instead of a UFO, I have a ray of sun. So you are, as a character, this ray of sun, and you're shooting rays at these giant heads. So instead of asteroids, I've made these faces that come towards you. And for me, those faces represent fears, ego, hurdles that we need to overcome. And so as this ray of light, you're shooting all of your fears, you're shooting all of your egos, you're shooting all of these tribulations and challenges that come your way. And if you're the UFO and you try to move, you become your full self. The half of the sun becomes a full sun. And I think that's kind of beautiful because it's this like metaphor about, you can't be yourself if you don't intend to move, if you don't if you don't put movement into your space and into your life. So that's really amazing.
Yeah. And how good were you at it, at video games when you were younger?
Oh, I don't know if I was good at all, but I was very committed. And I think, half of it is about being committed. Yeah.
Okay. Because I know when I was younger, it was always like they had a game room, right?
Yeah.
And it was always this competition, who was the best on the block.
Yeah.
And Asteroids was like a big thing.
I think, if you're one of those people that just want to get better at something a little bit every time, games are amazing for you because every time you can just try and get better and get better and get better and get better. And so that's something that definitely you can see the improvement. There's not many things you do in life where you can see where you started, where you finish, and then the next time you do it, how far you've come and how far you've improved.
Wow. Well, Shantell, video games have influenced many traditional artists over the years, but can you talk about the ability for you to put your mark on games and even monetize your artistic creation?
Yeah, it's such an honor. It's for me spending so much time doing this, using this tool, like I said, that I believe kind of enhance our imaginations to, as then and as an adult, to re-envision that and give it kind of a meaningful concept. So for me, to be able to bring my message in, to be able to bring my philosophy, to be able to bring my concepts into my work and into games and into other works that I do, it's a way of almost like planting seeds. So in a way, I believe that I'm planting these positive messages, which are thread lines or themes of my work. And I get to put that into these different packages, into these different mediums, into these different tools, which then go out into the world and hopefully do some good or inspire someone or intrigue someone or, have someone want to be creative themselves in a different way.
Yeah, and you're also an illustrator. Can you tell us a little bit about that, your career as an illustrator?
Yeah, I don't know if I would say illustrator. I would say more artist, because I
Hmm.
think artist gives you that biggest box, because as an illustrator, that typically means you get a brief and you have to execute a brief. Whereas I'm not very good at accepting briefs or following them. So I say more of an artist. And, I've been able to take this medium of drawing, simply I'm doing something that we can all do. We can all pick up a pen and draw. But what I find fascinating is how far a line can take you. This year I choreographed my first ballet for the Boston Ballet.
Oh, nice.
Um, I've taken over the exterior of like the Lincoln Center, the home of the New York City Ballet. I've had my work
Yes.
on the screens of Times Square. Um, and that's all from a line, something that we can all do. So I love this idea. If you walk into a museum and then you see my work, there's nothing in there that is inaccessible to you as the audience, because everything in there started with a pen, started with a pencil. And so there is this almost a permission or an invitation to the viewer to kind of like do the same.
Wow, yeah, you talk about the ballet. You are an artist, that's for sure. But what are some of the things that game artists should know?
A game artist, I think that's a little bit out my territory, but I think what I would like them to know is that there's still people out there that still want to play games, that want to play simple games, that want to imagine and don't necessarily want everything given to them. So
Hmm.
I think, that's kind of my hope for game designers and people out there.
Yeah, and why is that important?
I think it's important because I think we are all about innovation and pushing things forward and pushing them things forward. But sometimes I think it's important to take a step back,
Hmm.
and it's so we're not dialing everything up. I think
Right.
sometimes it's important to dial things down because then we can be more internal and the external isn't kind of taking over everything. So I think it's balance. And so I think we are seeing things on both of the sides of the spectrum. But I know for myself, I've shied away from playing games because they seem to give you too much.
Well, the generation today don't shy away from playing games, but their games are a whole lot different than when we were growing up with Asteroids, Atari, and things like that. When you think about today's games, it's a lot of creativity, isn't it? And what else, other than the creativity, what else do you, from your view? Because I don't do what you do. What you do is fascinating. But how do you view today's games as opposed to, or in comparison to the games of Atari and what we've been talking about?
Yeah, well, it's a good question for you too. I don't know if you're playing games, but like I said, I've not been playing them too much. I'd love, I probably have to find some younger family members to show me. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I also have a slightly addictive personality. And so, we all have phones. So I was playing games in my phones for a little minute, and then I realized I wasn't getting off at the right subway stops because
Oh
I was
gosh.
trying to because you're on the bus and you want to beat the bus and it's your stop, but you don't want to look up because you might die. So you just keep going. And so that happened to me probably too many times. And then I was like, okay, I gotta get off this.
You
I'm
you
missing
don't
my
want
train stops.
you don't want to hear the one disaster I had on the subway missing my stop. It wasn't looking at a video game either. So,
Yeah, you have to tell us that next time.
yeah, absolutely. And so you mentioned the ballet, but you got so much going on now. I'm also told that you collaborated with uh, North Face. You've done fashion and work with Kendrick Lamar. You're into a lot of different things. Where do you find the time?
I think as long as you eat well, drink well, sleep well, you can do a lot of things. It's interesting. I always have friends that say, "Oh, I'm working 12 hours at work or 25 hours at work, and I'm at work like all week, all these hours." And I'm like, how do you get stuff done if you're doing that many hours because you don't have the time to focus? And I think as long as you're sleeping well and you're getting your 8 hours, maybe 7 or 8 hours, then you wake up with the energy to do all these things. And I think, I've always been pretty highly productive, but I think
Hmm.
the most important key thing is just sleep, wake up, and then as an artist, we're in a fortunate position, or I'm in a fortunate position where I'm doing what I'm passionate about. So when I
Yeah.
wake up at 7 a.m. or 8 a.m., I'm jumping into all the things I want to do. And I think that, and then also just being organized, I try to be as organized as possible because that's the only way that you can do and manage multiple different projects at different times as well.
Well, someone once said something along the lines that if you're doing what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. So
Yeah.
um, it sounds like that's what you're doing. I want to hear just off topic, but I really want to hear more about your work in fashion, and particularly as we mentioned, you work with Kendrick Lamar, you collaborate with North Face. Tell us a little bit about that and how. I mean, it seems like you're excited about everything you do. So how exciting is that, and what goes into that?
Yeah. So as a kid, I was a kid that didn't grow up with museums. I didn't grow up with galleries. Like I didn't grow up, kind of seeing art around
Where'd
me.
you
But
grow up
what
at?
So I grew up in Thamesmead in Southeast London.
All right.
So, very kind of working class project that I grew up in. And so, we didn't have a ton of access to cultural things. But what we did have is, we were wearing sneakers and we were wearing cool t-shirts. And for me, in a way, those are museums. Those are museums of the body. You go out and you are a gallery, you are a museum,
Mm,
you save up for those sneakers. And so for me, there's always been this connection between, self-expression and creativity, art, and fashion. And so I've always been interested in that. And so it's really incredible also to then have the opportunity to create your own. And so, for example, you mentioned North Face. So last year I did a collection with North Face across Europe. And we did, parkas, hoodies,
hmm.
t-shirts. And that's incredible because friends have sent me pictures from someone wearing, one of my North Face jackets in Germany or France or England or, somewhere else. And I even bumped into someone in Boston. I was walking down the street in Boston and there was a girl with my North Face jacket on. I was like, "Oh, I made that." And she's like, "What?" I was like, "I made that." And she's like, "What do you mean?" And I was like, "Look, open up the jacket. You'll see my name inside."
Wow.
And she opened it up, and then and so that was a surprise for her. But I was just, I was caught off guard because you're walking down the street and you're like, "Oh, that's mine."
Yeah, it's
Um,
almost sounds like almost like a singer hearing their song on the radio.
Yeah, exactly. And
Like, that's my
and
song.
what is nice is, my family, my friends, they can wear that and it becomes a part of that. And I've worked with Nike and Adidas and North Face and a
Mm,
big collection with Puma and also aside from that, like furniture as well. I've worked a lot with different furniture companies like B&B Italia and Vitra. And for me, these like beautiful items that either go on your body or in your home are accessible ways of expressing creativity and art.
yeah. I'm reading something as we speak. It says Kendrick Lamar and visual artist Shantell Martin provided an exhilarating 75-minute performance at Art Basel in Miami for their partnership with American Express's Music Meets Art campaign. When someone says something like that, you provided an exhilarating. That has to. Do you read your reviews?
I don't. I'm not a big reader. You know, if I
You
need
gotta
to know,
read
I'll
us.
find out. Yeah, yeah. Okay, yes.
But that's
Um,
that's it's always fun. I've written books. I've seen great reviews on some of the books, but I've also seen not so good
yeah.
reviews. So it kind of, like you said, that personality, that addictive personality. You want to see it all. I want to know what you're saying about my work. So
Yeah. Well, I think, if you start to read the reviews and you can get caught up in that, especially if there's something negative or you don't like or you don't agree with. And so I'm always a big proponent or advocate for the process. For me, the important part is the process. It's the moment, the connection, the experience. And then after that, it's fine. I'm kind of figuring out how to expand that or how to work on the next one.
mhm.
But working with someone like Kendrick was such an amazing experience because someone of his caliber, but in person he and his whole team was so welcoming and so nice and so humble,
Oh,
but
that's
yet
great to hear.
so talented and professional. And definitely, that isn't the case with a lot of musicians or creatives out there. There's definitely a lot of ego out there, and so it was really nice to work with someone like him but feel so welcomed, and that really helped kind of spur and make for a really beautiful collaboration.
Yeah. And how did that project come about?
Someone called me and said, this guy would like to collaborate with you, and I was like, I honestly didn't really listen to his music at the time, so I was like,
Right.
okay, sure, maybe. So I think that's how most of my projects come. Someone's calling me, or someone from my team, or someone's emailing, and then it's a matter of kind of working through a list of if it's a yes or a no.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I tell you what, going back to North Face now, when I see North Face, I'm going to be checking the name inside. But let's go back to the gaming part. What's your favorite part of all this?
I think my favorite part of all this is to have the opportunity and be an observer or spy on the wall, seeing people play the game and interact with it. So, for example, I think it was last weekend, it was Complex Con in Long Beach in California. And so um, POLYCADE, who have facilitated the reskinning of this game, POLYCADE and Atari had an area there where people could come and play my version of Asteroids. And so I got to go there, and people, didn't know I was there or that I'm watching, but just to see people just play and enjoy it, and to see some people just come back and come back and come back. Um, that was really beautiful, just to see your creations on the screen being interacted with people. And
Mm,
and also, just I think there's such a nice full circle about that. As someone that did play this game as a child, that had
right.
no idea that I would ever be an artist, or had no idea even what really an artist was at that point, to full cycle in the future, be an adult watching someone play a game that I played as a child. And I think that's really something that's beautiful about art, is that there are a lot of these connections and these full cycles that bring us together or create these unique experiences. And it was funny, I met a couple of people, they were like, well, my dad grew up playing Atari, like he loves Atari. And I was like, oh wow, like, so you also have this new generation that are being introduced to games that connected them with their parents now.
Wow, that's awesome. And now, is there a part of this that one little part at least that you're like, okay, let me get this part over with. I'm not particularly fond of this part. I mean, we talked about your favorite part. Is there a least favorite part?
I think sometimes my least favorite part is just it might even just be the launch of it or the anticipation of it,
Mhm.
because I'm not someone that likes to spend a lot of time on social, online, or kind of like putting these things out there. So I think sometimes that's not the fun part. The fun part for me is the making, the doing, the process of it. And the not fun part is, like, okay, now you got to post about it or talk about it. I just want it to just be out there, and other people can talk about it or post about it.
Yeah. And what aspect of this would be surprising to someone like myself, people looking in from the outside? What might surprise us?
I don't know about that, but I think when you have the opportunity to play the game yourself, I think what surprises me sometimes is that I made it all on my iPad,
Okay.
so I'm sitting at home or in my studio kind of drawing these new little asteroids. And I think that's surprising that, also something that we all have access to can then be something that thousands of people play.
Mm,
And so I think there's something quite nice about that, with the tools being so simple and accessible.
wow. And to get into what you do with, reskinning the games, what kind of talent and what kind of personality does it take to succeed?
Oh, that's a good question, right? So I think to succeed, I can only really speak from my own hand experience. It takes a lot of commitment. I mentioned that word before. Commitment is huge. You have to be committed to it. You have to be consistent. You have to be a little bit defiant, because people are going to tell you no, and you might be coming from a place that is full of a lot of no's. So you have to be defiant, not to listen to that. You have to be kind. You have to be talented. You have to be humble. You have to be
Mm,
organized. And I think today we don't live in a world where you can just be talented, or you can
right.
just be organized, or you can just be nice. I think we live in a day as an artist where if you want to be successful, it is a combination. It's almost a cocktail of understanding your strengths, but also understanding your weaknesses. So if you're not a good public speaker, practice at it. If you don't know your taxes, educate yourself. If you don't know how to read a contract, which we have to do these days, just start to learn how to read one. You don't have to excel in all of these areas, but I think now today it's important to be aware of each of these areas. And so, I think be kind, work hard, be organized, and be super committed, and then also be patient. Be
Mhm.
patient.
And is there anything you would recommend for education in this, whether it be a book or other ways of learning when it
Yeah.
comes to this?
I think, with regards to education now, and, a lot of people say to me, "Oh, how do I become an artist?" And firstly, I say, well, sometimes let's go in before you go out. I think we live in an age or an era of consumption, and people think, well, if you go out and consume other works, that will help you create your own work. And I think the more opportunities we have to go in, where we spend time with ourselves, we spend time thinking, we spend time working intuitively or spontaneously. I'm a big component and advocate of also working spontaneously. Just put some music on and draw and create, and just see what happens. Because if you do that and you repeat that over time, multiple amounts of time, as a person that looks back at all the drawing or the writing that you did spontaneously to music, now you have the opportunity to look back and see what are the recurring themes. Because I think something that we all find hard today is to find our own unique style and fingerprint and identity, but we can extract that. But to extract that, we have to take time away. We have to take that time away where we're questioning ourselves, where we're over planning, where we're overthinking, where we're hesitating, where we're being insecure. So a big kind of encouragement that I would have is just make things, make things, make things, make things, but put yourself in a position where you're taking that time away. And then you have that power of reflection to look back and extract. And you say, oh, I'm always using this type of space, or
Mm,
gravitating towards this type of tool, or this type of density, or this type of color. And those are almost the fragments or the puzzle pieces of you that you can start to put together to build your style, to build your identity, to build your uniqueness. Because that's the thing that I think a lot of us, or a lot of especially younger artists today, have as a struggle, is finding who their core is. Because
mhm.
there is so much outside that they can emulate or try to copy. And so my encouragement would be to go inside.
Mm. Well, are you still in production with reskinning the Atari game, and
No,
is it
it's
available?
Yeah, so it's pretty much done. If you and hopefully there's a link. If you go to POLYCADE, POLYCADE have a Twitter, they have a website, and essentially it's going to come out, I believe. And now I'm going to misquote myself, but I think it comes out December 13th, but it might be a little bit earlier. So don't quote me. It comes out in the next week or two,
Okay.
and it's going to be available as 1,000 NFTs that you can register for, that you can do like a pre-register for, and yeah, and then it's going to become basically as a digital cartridge, a digital game that is playable, and the high score will be saved on the blockchain. So there's a lot of these cool technology components which allow you to have this digital asset, this digital game, which is playable and savable. So that's amazing.
Well, she's a visual artist, intuitive philosopher, a cultural facilitator, a teacher, a choreographer, a songwriter, a performer. She is Shantell Martin. Check out the reskinned Atari game that she's done. Should be within the next couple of weeks. POLYCADE has it, so go to their website, go to their social media, and you'll be able to indulge in this great experience. Thanks so much, Shantell Martin. We really appreciate it. Thanks for joining the Black Press of America.
Well, thank you for having me, and I'll also post about it. You know, Shantell with an S and 2 L's and no E on the end. You know, come find me too and find out more there. But thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, and thank you all for joining Let It Be Known. We'll see you again soon.